Hello, Soul Spiralers, and welcome back to today's episode. Today, I have the amazing Gosia here with me. She is a naturopath and medical herbalist of the last 20 years, working with detoxification. Her business is aptly named Detox House, and she mainly focuses on the amazing tool of live blood analysis. Her passion is leading people towards a more healthy and vibrant life so they can feel their best. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Gosia. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristin.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. And I mean, I have worked, Gosia's looked at my blood and we've had a lot of fun experiences in that aspect as well. So I guess you could say you're my naturopath too.
We had amazing experience looking at your blood.
Yeah, maybe we'll get into that.
The best blood I've seen.
True. Yeah, definitely reinforced that I'm doing the right thing with the way that I'm living. So I really appreciate you being able to show me that. But there's always more work to be done in a sense as well.
Oh, absolutely.
There's always improvements to be made. So it's such an amazing tool though. So maybe before we go into a little bit more about the live blood analysis and the work that you do, I usually ask everyone that comes on to just maybe share a little bit about your story or who you are or how you've become who you are today doing these amazing sort of work.
Yes, I would be happy to share that because my story really began in Poland, where I grew up until I was 20 years old, and then I moved to Australia. But living in Poland was very interesting because we all had very simple lives. The winters were really cold and dark, and summers were beautiful. And as a child, I remember being very free and loved spending time in my gardens and hanging up on the tree and eating fruit and just looking at life from the top. And that started that passion I've got for nature. And until now, my happy place is my forest, the same as it was back then when I was younger in Poland. So I really appreciate that early upbringing in a natural sense, in the garden, surrounded by beautiful fruit trees. We had beautiful, massive garden full of flowers and trees. So that's how it all started.
It's so beautiful. It sounds so idyllic and I can picture it when you're telling me you're like in the trees, like pulling the fruit and eating it until you're full and all those sorts of things.
Especially the way we were living. There was nothing synthetic or processed. There was no packaged foods, and the fruit I was eating wasn't sprayed. So when I was eating fruit straight from the tree, I could see little worms inside, and I was just observing nature in that sense, which now it's very different. The kids don't know where the fruit most of the time where it's coming from. Very often it's packaged in plastic. So I really appreciate that about my upbringing, that I was able to experience that.
It's so powerful, especially like you say, like most kids, they just think that the food comes from the supermarket or comes from a plastic wrapper. It's amazing how that's kind of what our life has shifted to. But also, oh my gosh, your eyes are like doing something to me. Like I'm fully just like eye gazing with you now, and it's so beautiful. I love it. But it's amazing if we can come back to that sort of more nat nature. And I know that that's something that you really focus on, and you find that passion in. How can we come back to that more natural state of being? So how did you get into becoming, obviously that was like your passion, like through you there, how did you come into being a naturopath and even specifically like live blood analysis, because it's a very niche kind of aspect of naturopathy, I guess.
So when I was 20, I moved to Australia and I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't speak the language, so first I went typically to TAFE, and I was studying English. And after that, I didn't know what to do, but I always had this passion for nature and good food, and also herbs and using natural ways of healing. And I was actually suffering from quite a severe acne.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me antibiotics. And I was taking antibiotics. They were very effective. They helped my skin. But the moment I stopped taking them, the acne was coming back. So I wasn't sure what to do. And that's where I started researching and thinking about it on my own, thinking, oh, maybe it's connected to what I'm eating. Maybe it's connected to what I'm doing. And I was medicating myself with all these natural different herbal extracts. And that's where my passion started, in that direction.
Yeah.
At that time, I was living in Melbourne, and I decided to study naturopathy. And that changed everything, because I realized that we don't really need to go to the doctor and use any medication, that we can really just use natural medicine, and we can learn how to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is really my message, that I would like people to understand, that once we learn how to look after ourselves and what's, so to speak, good or not so good for us, we can make those choices. And we don't need to every time rush to the doctor and ask for prescription. We can just have those remedies at home and learn how to eat and look after ourselves.
Yeah, rather than being so dependent on that.
Rather than being so dependent.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because our bodies are so, I mean, you know, you hear me speak about this, like our bodies are so intelligent, like they know how to heal themselves. We just need to support them the best that we can. It's funny, like I think you've heard lots about my story, like through our conversations, because I love how inquisitive you are as well. But I think I remembered you'd mentioned about the acne, but I thought you had mentioned that about your daughters. I didn't realize you personally had such a similar experience to my own story. So it really makes more sense even more now why we resonate. Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. So were you able to clear all these skin issues up through your naturopathy and through your herbal medicines?
Yes, I did. And it was actually interesting that none of the medication I was using ever helped me.
Yeah.
And then I was able to do this myself with the herbal medicine and supplements, but mainly obviously with the diet and other things I was doing. Everything I've learned at my college where I was studying.
Yeah. And so that led you more down this pathway of detoxification? Absolutely.
So I understood then that we've got so many different conditions, and people say, I've got this problem, and there's lots of different names for the conditions. And what I've learned to understand is that all of those conditions are based on toxicity, and that leads to inflammation in the body. So if we're not able to detoxify properly, we really cannot produce healthy, vibrant cells. And that obviously, looking at the health conditions from that point of view, we need to ask ourselves, what are we eating? What is our environment like? What are we doing? How much time we spend indoors versus in the sun, in the fresh air, all of those different things. But the detoxification is definitely a key. And that's why my business is called Detox House, because I see our body like a house we live in, and it has lots of different rooms, and all of those rooms on a regular basis, they have to be maintained and cleaned. That's how I see our system as well, that we have to look after each separate organ and system in our body.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's so cool. Like it's like, and when you think about it in that way, it really gives you that perspective of like, oh, you might be doing all you can to look after your colon, let's say, as one house, but then there's a heart house, and there's a large intestine, or is the colon, or like the liver, and
everything is connected. It's like a chain reaction. One thing leads to the other. So there are all those different areas in the body, and they all dependent on each other. And that's why I love live blood analysis so much, because when I test the blood, I see how congested the blood is. Red blood cells carry oxygen through the body, so they should be nice and round and bouncy, and they should move freely. However, most of the time they are sticky. And that indicates to us that there is lots of congestion in the body, that oxygen distribution is not very effective.
Yeah.
So that's where we can clearly see on the screen in front of us, we've got a proof that the oxygen is not distributed properly.
Yeah.
So that's really valid point of the consultation. I get lots of people coming to see me, and they bring tests, lots of tests, and they don't understand the tests.
Yeah.
There are long names of some different things that they get from they've been diagnosed with, but they just don't know what it means and what to do about it.
Yeah.
But when we put the blood under the microscope, it's a living tissue. It's straight away shown on a screen, and we very quickly can determine what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's not just red blood cells. There is so much more we can see. We can see if there is any deficiencies. We can see if the liver is not filtering properly. There are fibrins in the background, which should not be there, but most of the time this is what I see. And we can see fungal overgrowth or parasites. There's so much more we can see in the blood.
Yeah.
So it's a really exciting tool to not to diagnose or not to say you've got this or this disease, but just more to say, hey, let's have a look how much oxygen is in your system. How well oxygenated is your body?
And so how did you actually get into, like, how did you even hear about live blood analysis? Was it just like you heard it through the grapevine and you were like, oh, I want to study this because it's so fascinating to you? Is that how you heard about it?
I actually went to see a lady who was doing this test, and I was just fascinated. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool to have that visual image of what's happening inside. And that led me to studying about it. And I purchased my microscope, done the course. Since then, I've done a few more, but that was the first one. And and since then, which was, I think, 8 years ago, I've been including that test in every consultation.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I think, like you were saying, it's so powerful for people to see a visual representation of what's happening internally. Like, I know that there's this story that you speak about when you have sometimes you have lots of women come to your clinic and then they send their husbands.
Yes.
And you tell me what you tell them, because I just love that story and the articulation of what you
Because
say.
what I've noticed is that women are not as involved in conversation as women are. So they are often coming to see me because the partners are telling them to do so.
Without
so they're not very open to it. They just come and say, okay, I'm here. And they don't really want to discuss much. So I know already that that's the trend. That's what's happening. And in case like that, I just take the blood without discussing much details with them. And I put it under the microscope. In many cases, it just shows very congested. Yeah. And they straight away say, okay, how can I fix that? Yeah. What can I do about it to change it? They don't like it. And then I've got a poster where it shows how the blood should look like. Yeah. And they look at the poster, they look at the blood, and they say, hey, I don't like that. Tell me what I should do about it. Yeah. So straight away, they are involved in this process and they want to do something about it. So it's not me telling them what to change, but suddenly they are open to that change, which is really great. I love seeing that.
It's like that instant curiosity.
Yes. Yeah. Especially when it's someone's blood, you cannot deny that. Yeah. The other day I had a client who said, this test is a reality check. Yeah. It is what it is. And every time when they're coming back for follow-ups, the blood improves, it flows better. Yeah. And that's how people they get motivated and inspired, because it shows them that things are improving. Yeah. I really like that.
I love that too. And so what's the most common issues you see? You said you see a lot of fibroids and obviously there's stickiness. So when you speak about stickiness, that means because the blood cells look like these round bubbles, don't they?
Yes.
And so the stickiness means that they're kind of all stuck together, or
Yes. And often even more advanced situation is that they even change the shape. So normally they should be nice and round.
Yeah.
And they should have very nice membrane around it, which is really important because obviously they are tiny little organisms living. And so they need to have not just proper shape, but also be flexible. And in a lot of cases, what happens is that they lose that shape. So they could be like moon shape or like a star or like flat, like a pancake.
Yeah.
And that shows me that we are in trouble when we've got that situation. So then I would approach that case more drastically, so to speak, more strict, more detox, much more strict regime, because we need to make those changes faster.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in cancer patients who had chemotherapy because of the treatment. The system is quite toxic. Yeah. So I see changes in the blood.
And so the fibrons that you fibrins.
Yes.
See, I don't quite know yet either. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about the fibrins. So that's when it looks kind of congested in the background. Is that right?
So the fibrins, it's called fibrin net, and that indicates that the liver is not filtering properly.
Yeah.
And so I compare this to like a spider web forming in the background. And what happens is that fibrin is a residue of incomplete digestion and all different toxins entering our system. And because they are not fully processed, they float in a system and interfere with our processes. And because our liver is our filter, the largest filter we've got, those fibrins accumulate on the filter. So then when the blood flows through the filter, it carries those fibrins within. And that's what contributes to stickiness in the blood.
So that will tend to happen first, and then
exactly.
The stickiness, yeah.
So that's what happens. And no matter what condition we're talking about, oxygenation is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because people come to me and they tell me, I've got this, I've got that, I've got this rare genetic problem, I've got all sorts of different names and conditions. And what I would like people to understand is underneath all of that, the root cause is lack of oxygen. So then we have to ask the question, what brings the oxygen to the body? What foods are full of oxygen? Living foods or dead foods?
Yeah.
So I basically ask those questions, and based on what I see on the screen. So if there is a congested blood and lack of oxygen, and I've got a cancer patient in front of me, then it's obvious that the congestion brought the condition.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard of this German doctor. His name was Otto Warburg, and he got Nobel Prize for discovering that cancer cannot live in a well-oxygenated environment. That was in 1930.
Wow.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But he discovered that. So if we oxygenate the body really well, then the tumors will not grow because they hate oxygen.
Wow.
The same with fungal overgrowth, with parasites.
Yeah.
So the healthy cells, they require a lot of oxygen.
Yeah.
Maybe not a lot, just the right amount for them.
Yeah.
But what happens in our lives, we are so surrounded by toxins, electromagnetic radiation. We sit a lot in front of computers, blue light, we stay up late, we eat too much, wrong foods. And the story goes on and on and on, all the damage we're doing to our body. Yeah. And all of that contributes to this congestion.
Yeah. So the ways to bring more oxygen into the blood would be to do the opposite of all of that?
Absolutely, totally. So I know that you are fruitarian.
Yeah, or mainly fruitarian.
Mainly fruitarian. And for most people, that's maybe too harsh,
extreme.
a bit extreme.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is that most people are afraid of eating fruit. Yeah. Because they think fruit equals sugar. Mm-hmm. So they say, oh, I don't eat much fruit. I'm eating healthy. Mm. However, I encourage people to eat fruit because fruit contains
the most
oxygen in its living food.
Yeah.
And the same applies to vegetables. So fruits and vegetables, good quality water, it has to be filtered. Mm-hmm. The filters I recommend are ultra stream filters, which are making alkaline, full of hydrogen water. So that helps as well. I recommend detoxification, so infrared saunas, enemas, anything which can get the toxins out of the system, eating a lot of fiber. So again, fruits and vegetables. Fiber is really helpful. It's like a broom going through our system and cleaning our colon. So that's really important. And obviously eating less helps.
Yeah.
So it's very common sense approach. I don't believe in any specific diet, like, oh, let's follow this diet, or let's do this, let's do that. As I said at the beginning, I grew up in a very simple environment. We didn't have much money, we didn't have much, but we had fruits and vegetables. And I don't remember anyone with cancer. People were not overweight, there was no depression, or maybe it was, but it wasn't very common.
Yeah.
And people were eating natural foods. I think that's really the basis. That's what we have to pay more attention to, because the foods are so processed. The other day at the supermarket, I've seen carrots chopped up in a plastic container. And I had no words. They're not only oxidating, but it's such a waste, and also wrong message sent to people instead of spending the time at home and preparing their own meals and knowing how to, involving children and doing those things together.
Yeah.
We have all these chopped veggies and fruit already in the plastic, and that just is a wrong approach, in my opinion.
Because it's making it into fast food. And fast food's not really going to serve.
And there is lots of waste as well, because if someone doesn't use it, then it's oxidized, goes in a bin.
Yeah, that's really, it's sad to think that that's like how, you know, we go more and more along. But because I'm one that shops at the farmer's market, I'm never in the supermarket. I almost forget that it's still like that, or that it's still becoming worse and worse. And then that random time that I'll go and run something from the supermarket, I'll be like, why do we need plastic on our bananas? Like they're already in their skin.
They already have protection.
Yeah. So that I find that really interesting, and really, I mean, it's also removing us even further from that naturalness, like on that plant, and being able to connect with that plant. Like you're saying, being able to like prepare that food yourself, it helps you to digest that food even better. Like it gets all of you, like when you're chopping it and the little scents coming up from chopping that carrot, your taste buds start to be like, oh, there's going to be carrots sometime soon in the near future. And then whether you're cooking it or you're eating it raw, like smelling it and bringing it more into your field, like I personally have found that aids so much with my digestion, versus like if I went out for dinner and had something, even if it was raw, I would definitely feel different than if I had made that myself.
Exactly. I am exactly the same. I love cooking at home and I love going to the markets. It's the whole process.
Yeah.
You go to the growers, you talk to them and you walk with your basket at the market. It's fun. It's a fun process. And then you bring everything home. And when I put all my veggies on the bench, it's such a colorful,
so abundant.
Just abundance is beautiful, and different wonderful scents coming of all these wonderful fruits and vegetables. And I always can't wait to prepare salad, or to even driving home, I have to have little fruit because it's so yummy and delicious. So I encourage everyone to cook at home, buy foods at the markets, support local growers. And just, it's so simple. It really is simple. Most people say they don't have time or the kids won't eat it, but they buying a processed food. So then when little kids are from the beginning, they brought up on salty, crunchy, unusual tastes, then fruit tastes a little bit different for them. So it's odd to eat fruit when they brought up on processed foods.
Yeah.
And I always tell moms who come to see me with the kids who say, well, my kid won't eat that. And I just tell them, look, just wait until they get hungry and put the colorful fruit in front of them. And automatically at some point they will try the fruit. Definitely. Because it's natural for us to eat natural foods.
Definitely. And I think that there's a big aspect of like the reflection of us respecting our foods is the reflection of us respecting ourselves. Like if you got like a pizza ordered or whatever it is, and then you have like a beautiful bowl of mangoes, what's going to be the easier thing to like connect with, if it's spiritually or energetically, and feel like so much respect for? It's going to be the fresh food. So Absolutely. And then when you have that respect and you have them all laying out on your bench, like you want to clean your fridge and make it beautiful and make them have like a lovely home to be sleeping in for the next week before that you consume them. And I think it becomes like a process of like expanding your consciousness and your respect for what we're putting in our bodies, which then returns to us have more respect for ourselves, because you are what you eat. So put the energy of what you want in that food, isn't it?
Totally agree with that. And that's why connecting with nature is such an important part of our well-being. Because if we stay in offices and we're deprived of sunlight most of the day, artificial light, exposure to radiation, and then people get hungry on the way home, so they purchase something like some fast food because right now they're hungry and they don't have anything prepared at home. It just becomes like a robotic scenario that they don't think about it. They just feel hungry and they want to stop that hunger. And I think that it's really important to realize for whoever is doing that. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe most people don't do that. Some people do it, but quite few people come home really tired and they say, I don't have energy to cook. But cooking will help you to feel better. So that's why it's important to recognize that and to say, if you just spend more time thinking about it and making beautiful, vibrant salads. Very often when I make a salad, I just think, oh, I need a little bit more red or a little bit more other colors and just make it more colorful. And I love making my own dressings, and it's always fun. I really love doing that. It's creative. And I don't like following recipes. I like my own creations. And it really is fun. So that's where I encourage everyone to do the same.
So powerful. I love it. I was just thinking, it's like if you look at the ingredient, if you're picking something out that, let's say, has multiple ingredients, if you can't be grateful for one of those ingredients on there, it's not meant to go in your body. Like how could you be grateful for a number?
That's like, a good point.
But I want to have a little brag for a second and talk a little bit about obviously we're on this topic of food and eating living foods, and I could say that the proof is in the pudding when we looked at my and Alex's blood.
Totally. Let's talk about that.
Because I mean, you see so many different types of blood every day, and I just, it's so beautiful witnessing how excited you were getting looking at our blood, even before we fasted, after we fasted, whenever it was, has been it's been really powerful to see and to reinforce to me that, especially for me or for humans in general, I do feel that we are meant to be eating all those living foods, because we've got the bouncy round red blood cells floating through.
Let me say this, that your blood, yours and your partner's blood, was the best one I've ever seen.
Wow.
So that says a lot. Because I've got a poster on the wall which shows the ideal situation. But it's super rare to see that. Yours was like the poster.
Yeah, wow.
Yours was ideal. And I was so excited. I was just like, oh, I've never seen, not never, but it's super rare. I haven't seen blood like that for such a long time.
Yeah.
So it made me so excited and inspired to see that. Beautiful red blood cells full of oxygen, bouncing off each other, very clean, nothing in the background. There was no fibrins, there was nothing else. Just really beautiful, nicely flowing blood. So definitely you've got a proof that whatever you're doing works for you. And I'm sure it would work for others. Because what we were saying before is that the body needs easy to digest, full of fiber living foods. And that's what fruits are. Fruits and vegetables as well. So when we add pure water, herbal teas, essential oils, beautiful natural herbs, homeopathics, all of that is supporting our body in a flow. So all we want to create in our body is the flow. And that's what happened in your live blood analysis.
Yeah, it was so cool to see.
It's absolutely amazing to see healthy, bouncy red blood cells.
Yeah, so cool.
Very good.
And we haven't talked about white blood cells at all. So like, obviously you can see we're mainly seeing red blood cells unless someone had like...
They always there. White blood cells are always there. It's just that we see much less of them. So,
which is a good thing. You wouldn't want to see too many of them, would you?
So basically, I observe them. When I look through the microscope, through the lens, I see much more than what comes up on the screen. So in that first moment when I analyze the blood, I count the white blood cells, and it has to be a certain number. And they need to be nicely placed. So when they all together, and when there is more of them, that's a more sign of your army accumulating the forces to fight against some viruses or bacteria, which is not a bad thing. The body is just doing its job. So it's all good. But if that is a response to infection, let's say, and that infection is not resolved for the long time, and it continues and it's just there, then we want to look into it. Why do you have this chronic long-term infection? And I make a note when someone has too like many white blood cells. And then we follow up on that. And sometimes people feel fine. They don't have signs of infection. So the body is doing its job. And we don't realize that, which is normal scenario. But sometimes on other occasions, people can be quite unwell as well. So it depends on how many of those white blood cells we've got there.
And so the white blood cells are cleaning the blood. Or like they're cleaning it from infections to create more, so that it can be more oxygenated.
Exactly. So also what happened, like I use this analogy that our white blood cells are like this creepy crawly in a swimming pool. You know how it goes around and it sort of gobbles all the different little things in a pool. So that's how I see our white blood cells too. They are our little protectors, and they clean the blood. But it's important, very important, to pay attention to how many we've got, and what's happening also at the time of infection, and if that after that infection passes, if then everything comes back to normal. So I can actually follow up and see what's happening looking at the blood.
So what's like a normal amount? How many should you have when you're just healthy and it's not fighting infection?
It's hard to tell how many, because it all depends, like what I see through the microscope. I count those cells per field. So there should be a certain number of those cells there. And then if there is too many, like let's say I should see around 4 to 6. So it's not that many per that field. And if there is like 20 or 30, then I know that the body is cleaning up. And there is infection there.
Do you ever, just a thought that maybe popped in my mind is when someone's like constantly having this, is there a link to chronic fatigue, like with the white blood cells constantly having to be the ones like working so hard?
It's more to do with autoimmune diseases, because autoimmune problems is basically inflammation which is not resolved. So it's a chronic inflammation, the body is trying to repair, and let's say that someone is eating, let's say as an example, gluten. Okay. And the body doesn't agree with that. So the body will produce like antibodies saying, hey, I don't want that. So it's reacting to that. And in that process, there is inflammation. So there is this inflammation. So when the person stops eating the gluten, the inflammation goes down. All good. But if every day someone is having gluten, then the inflammation is constantly there.
Reoccurring.
And what happens is that inflammation is damaging the cells. So it's like, I compare inflammation to the fire going through your house, and the fire is damaging. When we've got a little bit of fire, like when we're warming up our meal, that's fine. The body can handle that. We actually need that. So a little bit is okay. But when there is a big fire going through the house, then we have to do something about it. And that's why looking into different foods or chemicals or mold exposure, or there could be so many different things, medication or drinking alcohol, or there's like
smoking,
lots of different things that can irritate the system, causing that inflammation. So for that reason, we have to eat simply, remove those foods which are highly, people call it allergic, but I say it highly irritant. And then just see, once your body stabilizes and inflammation goes down, when you add one thing, what happens then? Because like in your case, you are eating mostly fruit. What if you suddenly had pizza?
I think
your
body
body
will
scream at you and say, hey, I'm not used to that. I don't have enzymes to digest that. So you will get inflammation. You probably would be bloated. You will feel really tired. So I mentioned autoimmune diseases because there is this constant inflammation happening in the body, and that this damages the cells. So it's something that the body cannot resolve because the irritant is always there.
So what do you usually recommend in those cases then?
It's a complex case because we have to look at the foods, which are the most important thing. We have to look at the lifestyle because stress is also having a huge impact. We have to look at the exposure to chemicals, the environment people are living in. Sometimes mold is a big issue, or even living in a cluttered space, dusty. It's more just, so we're looking at lots of different aspects. And then we're discussing changing the diet. There are certain herbs and supplements helping to detoxify the liver. And if someone is, for example, drinking tap water, it's really important to put the filter. It's very individual approach. It depends on the individual person, what they need. Most people take a lot of medication because they don't know what else to do. So just to remove that symptom, they take medication. Most of the time, it's a complex case because I cannot just say, stop taking the medication. And it's a process where we are mainly working with the diet and cleansing the system.
So number one is to remove the obstructions.
Remove the irritant. Yes. And then we can, so the blood flows much more easy. It's really important also, we have to mention that stress is huge. I get people, even young children, who are anxious, depressed, stressed, hyperactive. And especially lately with what's currently is happening, people are very stressed. There is lots of things we can do. Again, connecting with nature, deep breathing, even something like listening to most beautiful, relaxing music candles,
Calm the nervous system down.
calming nervous system,
Yeah.
making sure that we're going early to bed,
Mm-hmm.
just creating relaxing atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's really, it sounds very simplistic,
Yeah.
but that's what we need. We need to get back to basics.
Yeah. We're less people being able to go on holiday. How can you make a holiday 1 day a week at home?
It's a very good point. Just
because you go on holiday and you relax and you switch off and you detach from your phone and you're out in usually in nature, you're taking deep breaths, maybe you're swimming, because the breath, I think, it would be so important given that we're trying to bring more oxygen into the
absolutely, we didn't
system.
mention that.
Yeah.
But it's super important to pay attention to our breath.
Yeah.
Most people, when they stress, they breathe just shallow.
Yeah.
So being aware of it, it's just breathing deeply and taking deep breath, stretching, moving the body. I live next to the forest, and every morning I go there with my dog and I do stretches. I look in the sun, I take deep breaths, and that just changes my whole perspective on life. Definitely. It's beautiful to observe nature.
Yeah, this last fast I did really, I had these such epiphanies about my breath, because the breath is what gets you through anything. Like even with the fasting, and obviously I was only having water, if I stay with my breath and I keep breathing, like I could still move around with ease, you know? But if I'm not focusing on that, everything feels so much harder. And so I think before fasting, I was not, like, I did yoga like on and off probably since I was like 12, but I never really fully connected with it. But through this fast, I connected so deeply with wanting to do yoga because I understood it was more about connecting with the breath. And I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Like the more that we can connect with our breath, the more we can be and heal and calm our nervous system, and everything else functions better. It's like the number one thing.
Absolutely.
If you're not breathing, you're not living, you know? The water and the food come straight after, but the breath, oh, so powerful. Do you do any like breathwork practices?
Yeah, so what I do in my own time is one thing in the forest, and I do this at home, but I also attended quite a few sessions, and the latest one was in actually Kulum, where I went to this beautiful session, breath work, and it was just amazing what happened. Like the more we were breathing, emotions were coming up, and people were crying, and all sorts of different emotions were coming out. And I also had this incredible experience where I felt like my childhood was sort of in front of me, if you know what I mean, when I was meditating and breathing. And it just reminded me how I was on the tree and I was eating the fruit, and how good that made me feel, how careless I was. So I didn't feel that any stresses were coming out, but I just felt incredibly connected to that younger Gosia, still in Poland. So I found this very beautiful experience.
I'd love to go with you next time.
Yeah, there is actually one coming up in a few weeks' time.
Oh, let me know.
So I love that. I really love that. And there was, when I was in India, I've done another very powerful breath work there. And I've been a few times in Bali where they had powerful sessions there. And every time I attended breath work, it was very powerful.
Yeah. And I think like a really simple breath work that you can do at home is just alternate nostril breathing.
Absolutely.
I give it to all my clients, like it, because it helps to balance both sides of the brain. We're getting the oxygen through both hemispheres, which then affects the body. So if you're like, no, I can't go out and do anything because perhaps the conditions of what you're having to be at home or whatever it is at the moment, just Google alternate nostril breathing and just do that for 5 minutes in the morning.
Like, it's so simple. So I've mentioned the things I've done were more like ceremonies and big events. But the beautiful thing about that, what you're talking about, is that we can do this at home. Yeah. Especially now, if we cannot go anywhere, let's do some more work at home. Not work. I don't want to practice is better than work. Work it sounds too hard. But now lots of people have time, and kids often don't go to school in those places which are in a lockdown or whatever. And I just think this is perfect time to create vision boards and to prepare beautiful meals at home and to spend time breathing and relaxing and having a beautiful bath with essential oils and Epsom salts. And just there's all this, those things are available to us. They don't cost much. We don't have to see practitioners to do it. We can just look after ourselves. But it sounds easy when you know what to do. When people are stressed, they just don't know how to start because they've got those thoughts constantly on the mind, and they feel really stressed out. They don't sleep very well. That makes them even more stressed. So the most simple thing, I believe, when you're in a state like that, is to just get out. Just get out of the house. And maybe if you're not close to forest or the beach, just look at beautiful tree or just some little insects, or try to connect with nature in that way. Or if you live in a little apartment, get beautiful plant and look at that plant. Or even watch documentary like David Attenborough documentary, something related to nature. It always is uplifting, and that's what we need more.
Nature is our home, just as our bodies are our
absolutely
home.
And that's why I think what's happening in our world today is actually a result of us disconnecting from nature.
Correct.
There's all this anxiety and depression and all the inflammation, this fire going through the house, is because we are disconnected. And we need to do more of that. Go camping, go take your shoes off, connect with the ground. That's really important.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered to do with live blood analysis that you wanted to mention?
We said that your blood was the best.
That was the most important thing.
We covered that. And it's just a very powerful tool.
Definitely.
And that's the reason I love doing it. And because there is no extra cost and waiting time to do the test, it's an additional bonus. So I think we covered everything.
Cool. Well, let me ask you our questions that I ask everyone that comes on the podcast. Do you know your sun, moon, and rising signs?
I only know that I'm a Virgo. I don't know other signs.
So Virgo.
I'm so Virgo.
I want to look up your other things. Maybe we'll quickly do it now. Do you know, and we don't know your human design either, do you?
No, I don't. Tricky questions.
What is your favorite fruit?
Orange.
Oh, why is orange your favorite? That's a very different favorite to most people, I would think.
Really?
Yeah. Usually people are more exotic, but I love oranges. We're in orange season.
I just love that is just such a beautiful color, uplifting color and smell and juice. I'm addicted to oranges.
So hydrating as well. Ocean or the forest?
Oh, that's impossible. It has to be blended.
I thought you were going to say forest for sure. All right, I'm going to put in your data here. Let's figure out what this other thing is. What's your birth date?
24th, 8/67. Do I have to say the year?
Unfortunately. 67. Do you know what time you were born?
No.
Okay. So we might not get to find out your one of the things won't be able to tell because we don't know your time of day, because that I think is based off your ascendant. You were born in Poland. What's the town where you were born called?
Oh, that's a bit tricky.
Do you want to write it in? How do you say it? Say it to me.
Oh, you say it Częstochowa.
Częstochowa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, even came up in the little,
Częstochowa.
Oh, you said it properly. I like it.
I like that. All right, let's see. She has your sun in Virgo, but your moon is in Aries. It makes sense as well, actually. Like you've got this fieriness like within you, like so your moon is like your emotions, it's your internal world, it's your relationships, whereas your sun is like who you are at your core. And the ascendant, which we don't know because we don't know the time of day, is how you how you project to the outside world. So it's kind of like how you look and all those sorts of things. So your moon in Aries is like the youngest of the zodiac. It's very like quick moving, like take action immediately, get to inspiration, like get on it, but also could be get bored of things quickly because of the same thing.
next
be a little bit like blah 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 kind of vibe. Yeah, so that's really interesting. But back to the questions. If you could return to one moment in your life and re-experience it again, what would you go back to? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The first thing is sitting on the tree.
Yeah, I thought it might have been.
I've mentioned that a few times today.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, I felt the happiest there.
Yeah, returning to that true nature.
Yeah.
Do you have a certain herb or plant or flower that you work with the most personally?
You mean like in the tinctures? Or?
Tinctures or in tea, or like some people say cacao, some people say mushrooms, depends what it is. Yeah.
Well, I like chai.
Yeah.
Because
nice.
it's a composition of lots of different spices, and I love spices. I think they have massive value for us.
Yeah, amazing. And sounds like maybe clove and cardamom.
Exactly.
And
they're very warming herbs and very good for digestion.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love incorporating that.
Beautiful. Do you have a favorite crystal?
Crystal. I love so many. I don't know which one is my favorite.
What color is it?
Purple.
An amethyst one, maybe?
Yeah, I think
there's so many crystals in this room. We're in my clinic room today.
I think that I will go for amethyst.
Yes.
It's just, but there's so many more.
Yeah, that's so funny that I didn't even know, because obviously you told me your favorite color is this turquoise kind of color, and Alex and I got you a crystal recently that's kind of fitting into this color experience, and I did not know that. So that's really cool.
I love that crystal. It's on my desk.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It was a aragonite, blue aragonite. Do you have a spirit animal?
No, I don't.
I could see you as a dolphin.
Dolphin, like a playful dolphin.
Yeah, in the water, like playing around. I don't know. Maybe Shanti, your puppy, is your spirit animal.
I don't know. I have to think about that.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I think it's just my website, detoxhouse.com.au. All the details are there.
Yeah.
So it's just an easy way to check the website and read about the different tests and different things I do.
Perfect. And I'll put your Facebook and Instagram in the notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like the biggest thing out of today was, how can you get more oxygenated in your body and your blood? And
that's definitely number one.
Yeah. And so there's so many ways to do that. And getting rid of the things that are standing in the way of that happening too.
Yeah. Good detox. Yeah,
amazing. Oh, it's been such a beautiful conversation and very informative. I'm sure everyone's going to love it. Thank you so much, Gosia.
Thank you. It was fun. It was really good. Thanks.